Hello and welcome to this year's Books of the Year podcast. Listeners, books discussed will likely have an episode on the pod associated, so links are in the show notes for both book and podcast. It's the same team as you'll have heard before, so without further ado, I'll hand you over to me introducing the gang. Welcome everyone. We have the usual crowd with us today for the Aspects of History Books of the Year. And so in no particular order, I have Roger Moorhouse, historian and author. I have Richard Foreman, novelist, publisher, and raconteur, yes. And we have Antonia Senior, who is a journalist, a writer, historical fiction reviewer for The Times, and of course host of the Spy Masters podcast. So this is Books of the Year. We've all got 3 books each. So I think we'll kick off with Roger, because I introduced him first. Roger, let's start.
Well, thank you, Ollie. It's been a curious year. I've spent most of it with my head down, writing my own book. So that might be by way of excusing myself from not having read more, but one does one's best. One that first springs to mind is actually Al Murray's book on Arnhem, which came out in I think September, around the anniversary of Arnhem, which actually I thought it sounds a bit like damning it with faint praise, but it was sort of surprisingly good. And we know that Al is a stand-up comedian, but he's also very well versed in his history, as we know from We Have Ways and that sort of connection with James Holland that he has. He is extremely knowledgeable, and particularly on Arnhem, which has been a sort of fascination of his, really, as he says himself, since childhood. And he sort of put all of that, experience and sort of condensed knowledge, and he's put all that into this book. And what's I think is most fascinating about it is that it's not just a retelling of Arnhem. He takes one particular day, which was Tuesday, 19th of September, which is sort of, if you like, peak Arnhem, and he just looks at the events of that day. So the argument being that all of our understanding and sort of collective narrative of Arnhem is predicated on the fact that we know it fails, and we know it fails in a rather costly manner. And he says if you just take that day, it sort of reintroduces the element of what if, so that not everything that you're saying about it is overshadowed by the hindsight that we know it was a failure. And it's a really interesting way of looking at history, because history, we should try as far as we can to put ourselves in the shoes of the protagonists, without the benefit of whatever it is, 80 years of hindsight or whatever it is. I mean, that obviously comes into our analysis as historians, but we shouldn't let it overshadow everything that we write about and how we interpret the evidence. And I think that's a really interesting way of kind of shedding that baggage and just looking at the events as they are. And he tells it beautifully. He writes very well. So I thought that was really. It's not a debut from him. I think it's a debut, if you like, as a sort of could we say a sort of serious history book. He'd written one called Command before, which was also very good. But that one, I think it was a really good book, and I found it sort of philosophically quite interesting as well because of that approach.
Oh, that's good. I thought it was really good as well, because he found a way of writing about Arnhem that, it's been done to death, and he still found a new angle.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm the first one to sort of complain about what we might call celebrities turned historians, but I don't this isn't that. It might seem at first glance that it's that, but it really isn't, as I say, because he did history at Oxford. He knows his stuff. As I said, this is a long-term passion of his, so it's not like it's a celebrity turned historians.
Unlike a lot of celebrity books.
Yeah. So I was very impressed with it. I thought it was really good.
Splendid. Antonia, I think we'll just go round. So listeners, we are all seated in Antonia's house in nice, comfy sofas, and Roger and Antonia are sitting next to each other. So it's Antonia next.
Thank you very much, and hello everybody. It wasn't actually the most vintage year for historical fiction. Obviously, I'm on top of a lot of it. I had to do my sort of roundup of books of the year for the Times, and I actually vaguely struggled to get excited about the current crop. But I did choose a book of the year for them, which I'm going to share with you, which I did adore. It's by the Irish writer Niall Williams, and it's called A Child in Time. And it's about a GP in Ireland who sort of lives a life, I guess, of kind of quiet desperation. He's kind of alone, and he lives with his daughter Ronnie, who is also kind of feeling like life is passing her by. And to cut a long story short, they find a baby, and they take the baby in, and then the kind of question of what to do with the baby becomes the kind of narrative driver of the book. The reason it's so good is it's just so beautifully written. I mean, it is so beautifully written. It is just gorgeous. It's the sweetest thing. Niall Williams is an amazing writer. It's a book about a place called Faha, Faha, which is a kind of made-up Irish town that he's written a couple of books about, a bit like, I guess...
Ballykiss Angel.
Right. Yeah, not like Ballykiss Angel. Anyway,
not Father Ted?
No, God, okay, can we... Dudes, like, this is not like Irish stereotype hour. No, this
Skibbereen. That's real.
Anyway, it's a beautiful book by a writer who's absolutely on top of his prose, and I guess I chose it because there might be more exciting books out there. There might be more narratively driven books out there, but one thing that I think is kind of I'm missing in a lot of the books that I get at the moment is prose that is so beautiful it makes you read sentences over and over again, and that's what I got with this book. So read it, guys. I'm guessing from your incredibly insightful comments that none of you have read it.
No, I was
That's
only
why
saying
you keep shouting Ballykiss Angel at me.
But Ballykiss is like Craggy Island's a made-up place in Ireland as well. That was why I said it.
Yeah, okay, but I was going more Trollope, right? It's a bit like Barsetshire. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Father Ted, but this book has very little relationship with Father Ted. So, yeah. Apart from being Irish. But no, it's a wonderful book and a wonderful writer, so I hugely encourage you to read it.
That sounds good. A Child in Time. Excellent. Well, Richard?
Hello,
sorry,
everyone.
Sorry, it's
hold on.
cool.
Listeners,
Oh, okay.
but stop hovering your mouse over the button in
It's set in Fraggle
Amazon.
Rock.
No, I'm sorry. It is by Niall Williams, but it's called Time of the Child.
Oh, beautifully read. It's, you know when you read the sentences over and over again and sometimes they don't quite sink in. Historical reviewer.
The prose sunk in, not the title.
Listen, normally I've got an editor. This is just me.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Anyway, it's a good book.
Time of the Child. Okay, right. Richard.
So, hello everyone. So my first choice is The Eagle and the Heart. I think Antonia knows it as The Heart and the Eagle. And this is Helen Castor's book about the reigns of Richard II and Henry IV. And they are tragic reigns as we know from Shakespeare. And it's interesting that actually how much kind of Shakespeare got right in terms of the spirit of their reigns and also the character of these people. Now, so this book fills in plenty of gaps for me where, you know, I don't know much about anything. But even fellow historians have basically lauded this book where, you know, just the kind of scholarship on show and the research. It's kind of been 10 years in the making, but this is an absolute kind of blockbuster of a book. And we have, you know, in a sense, the first half is about Richard II, and he was an awful ruler. I mean, he really was. He's up there with, I don't know, King John, Papa Doc and Starmer. If that's possible. And then obviously we move on to Henry IV, and there's a kind of different kind of tragedy where, you know, Richard II was just a kind of, you know, a sort of spiteful, nasty piece of work. We have kind of the tragedy of Henry IV's reign was a question of legitimacy, really, for the first half of the reign. And we had, the weeping sores of kind of, conflicts in Scotland and Wales, and, history repeats itself. We still have the weeping sores of Scotland and Wales. That's a joke. And so then we come to sort of the end of, Henry IV's reign, where he falls ill. And, the kind of coda of the book is that, basically we get to Henry V. And ills are cured in some regards. But the book is brilliant. I mean, Helen's almost this unicorn where we got this scholarship and research, but the writing is, superb. I hope it does win a few awards. Generates the sales. I mean, it's already kind of book of the year for lots of people, but I can heartily recommend it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I read it before interviewing her, and the episode for that is coming out in the coming weeks, listeners, but she's an academic as well.
Yeah, but she's got such style. I mean, it's the kind of the human story, if you like. And, it's all the research is there. Just, in terms of just, looking at the records and just, the money that, Richard II was spending and couldn't afford. It's, again, history may be repeating itself with the current government. But it's just such a fine book.
The two go so well, don't they, Richard II and Henry IV? Because like each time you look at Henry IV's reign, I always think, he's managed to secure the throne from Richard II, but then, he spends the whole reign worrying about securing the throne.
Consolidating.
Yeah. And then, I was just, why don't you just relax and enjoy your reign? But then that's what Richard II did, and look what happened to him.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was and sometimes relaxing during his reign, but then he was just out to get people. He kind of created enemies and then tried to keep punishing them.
Nasty.
He was a nasty piece of work. He really was. Yeah, but the book captures all of that and more. I mean, there's just how the threat of invasion and how France, but for some sort of bad weather and them not being able to pay their troops, they would have kind of attacked in earnest. It's superb.
Yeah. Then we would all be speaking French, but that can lead on.
Not me.
Right. So my turn. I am picking a third book in a trilogy of histories of they're naval histories of Britain rather than histories of the Navy, and that's by N.A.M. Roger. And this, I think. These three epic books, and they're hefty tomes, listeners, but they are fantastic. They start, I think, in the late 7th century AD, all the way up to 1945. So this final part in the three begins in 1815 with victory over the French in the Napoleonic Wars. 10 years before Trafalgar's happened, so the seas are ours. And then it's so interesting reading about a time where Britain has no real rival on the seas. It is unsurpassed, and that's a problem because that means a rot sets in the Admiralty where they basically start running out of officers who've had fighting experience, and then they've also the steady creep of the civil service, the bureaucracy who want to, save money, inevitably. And Roger writes all about this kind of stuff, this change over the 100 or 130 odd years as we build up to the First World War, actually, is as a build-up of kind of, there's an amateurism that sets in, and he writes he's got a sense of humour, but in the first part of the book, you can't imagine how this would happen, having beaten the French in all those wonderful battles led by Nelson. And so they have, probably, if you were to ask people what the most famous battle is between Trafalgar and Jutland, they might pick Navarino, the Battle of Navarino in 1821, I think that is. And the Admiralty's embarrassed by it. They didn't really want to be there, didn't want to win it. The Admiral who wins the victory basically disobeyed orders to fight it. And the way he writes about that is It really does shine a microscope on the limitations of the Admiralty that had set in quite early on in the period after the Napoleon Wars. And then obviously this leads into the First World War where, it gets quite serious, and it turns out that Britain's not prepared as much as they think they are. And then he takes us up to the Second World War, and of course the Second World War is the sort of heyday for the Royal Navy, and they perform brilliantly. It's a vast fleet by then. So it's just this sort of grand sweep of naval history. And he does say, just briefly, I know I've droned on a bit, but he does say briefly that this is a history of all the interconnected services and bureaucracies and the government and the people who are all involved in the Navy, because it was such a key part of Britain's defence for that whole period of time. So it's a wonderful, wonderful book.
I think you're right. You did drone on a bit. I'd just like to say, in terms of Nicholas Roger, he's one of the best speakers I've ever heard talk about his books. This guy is, there's got to be plenty of argument in this book, as well as sort of telling a great story about, in a sense, the rise and fall of the Royal Navy.
It's also quite rare to have one person who sort of dominates a field quite so much. I mean, he's like the guy, isn't he?
Yeah, these books are going to last for the next 100 years, and they're going to be up there, yeah.
Yeah, I read the middle one, Command of the Ocean. It's completely brilliant.
And they sold in their droves.
Yeah.
This is serious history, doing some serious sales.
That's what we like.
Of course.
This one deserves to sell, I think. It's his lifetime's work, so...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay,
Very
right,
good.
we're moving into round 2. How are we doing? We're on
Third
18
drink.
minutes. Yeah, third drink, Richard's third drink. We're on number 1, listeners. Roger, you're second.
There was quite a rash of anniversary books in 2024, going back to 80 years of, back to that period, 1944. We're into that period, and the one that I thought had novelty at least on its side, I thought was interesting, was Keith Lowe's Naples 44, which is not a city that I knew much about, and particularly about that phase of the war. But it was his work ethic in terms of research and putting that thing together, I think, was remarkable. There were quite a few times over the last few years where I sort of spied him in a far corner of the British Library, beavering away and doing his thing, as I was in the opposite corner, beavering away and doing my thing. But he's really put the yards in on this one. It took him a long time to write it. If you're not familiar with Keith's work, he does write beautifully well. And some of his, like, if you go back to his book on the bombing of Hamburg, absolutely fantastic piece of work. So you're in pretty safe hands. There are, a book like this, you don't necessarily have to agree with everything in it. It can be sort of food for thought, And I think there's an element there where, and I think this is partly a trend that we've seen, I suppose, going hand in hand with what do we say? I suppose academic history, and in the last few years, the sort of the conscious marginalisation of sort of conventional narratives and white men and whatever that might be. I think there's a tendency in Keith's book to a little bit be overcritical of the Allies themselves, which I think is part and parcel of that particular trend as well. Yeah. Versus, the Italian people or the German occupation regime to sort of, in a sense, sort of shift the blame onto the Allies for atrocities and whatever. I mean, it happens. War is messy and war is hellish. This sort of thing happens, but it doesn't mean you can necessarily juxtapose at the Allies and their intentions with, the German occupiers and their intentions, which I think is a sort of growing trend.
Well, it's people bash the West nowadays.
Yeah, it's
and
the
it
same
sells
thing.
among certain circles.
Yeah, and it's just projecting that mentality
and
backwards.
It could almost be a sort of unconscious bias where it does creep into commissioning and writing.
Yeah, so that's one thing I think we have to
I didn't really get that off Keith's book.
No,
actually, no, not really. I mean, there was large scale prostitution and stuff like that, but it seemed like it was more. The way I read it, maybe it's
sex workers, by the way,
because I got more of the impression it was basically cock up. in that the Allies had to fight up Italy, and they didn't really have time to worry about this administration and there was lots of different reporting lines, so there was no real responsibility either. That's the impression I got, rather than it was bloody white men coming over and ruling.
Yeah, I mean that's a very sort of blunt way of putting it, but I think that I'm saying that in a sense, and as you said, almost subconsciously even.
Yeah,
that's kind of the intention behind it.
The kind of moral equivalence argument where, why shouldn't we see that the communists was just a better option than the Allies taking over? I'm not saying it's about that book, but there is a strain of thought about this. It doesn't necessarily apply to Keith's
and you get the same thing, talking. I mentioned Keith's book on Hamburg, but if you look at like Dresden, for example, the narrative of Dresden, every year that comes around, and it's why did we bomb Dresden? Well, there are very good reasons why we bombed Dresden.
Yeah, that's been used as a justification for bombing in the Israelis. I don't want to.
Wow.
Let's start that one running.
We're now having a hot potato with our drinks.
Yeah, I realised I shouldn't have said that the moment I did, but yeah, Dresden, as you say, it always gets brought up.
Yeah, and it's just brought up as a sort of woe is me. What the West is so awful. It's ahistorical. That now that's one end of the spectrum. I'm not putting Keith in the same category, but I think there was a whiff of that. But the book generally, I thought was really well done.
Yeah, very eye-opening book. That Antonia. We're racing through this. We're on 24 minutes.
Goodness. Okay, well, I'll take my time.
Yeah.
So my second book is, obviously I do the historical fiction. I'm also doing the Spy Masters podcast. But so sometimes in my downtime, I like to read something that is neither fictional nor spy based. And I came across this book that was it was sort of a bit of a bestseller this year. One of those kind of left field ones. It's called The Wide, Wide Sea, by the very Americanly named Hampton Sides. And it's a sort of narrative non-fiction account of Captain Cook's final voyage. And it's completely brilliant. I mean, it's completely brilliant. I mean, it falls into my area of interest because I'm completely obsessed with Patrick O'Brian, and this is like reading a non-fiction Patrick O'Brian.
Was this Tahiti?
Yeah, I mean, he does all sorts of things. So he explores up near Alaska, and he goes back to the kind of Polynesian islands where he's been in previous voyages, only to discover that his previous voyages have infected the entire island with terrible venereal diseases. And there's so many things to love about this book. The first thing to love about it is it's just so brilliantly written, and you're just carried away. And I know it's an overused cliche that it reads like a novel, but it really does. The second thing to love about this book is that it doesn't shy away from the fact that, Captain Cook has become a slightly wearisomely controversial figure in the modern world. What? Oh, come on, all the kind of nonsense about him being a kind of like imperialist. So it doesn't shy away from those arguments, but basically it brushes them aside and says, look, you're judging him by modern criteria. This guy was incredibly brave. He was incredibly talented. By his final expedition, he was tired, he was old, he was knackered, he was ill, he had backache, and he was grumpier than he'd ever been, and he was still an amazing captain who did incredible things.
We've all been there.
Overcooked.
What, being brilliant and brave? Yeah.
And grumpy.
And grumpy, yeah. So yeah, fabulous book. Highly recommend it. And I'm going to go out and read everything else Hampton Sides has ever done. I kind of bought it because I really loved David Grann's The Wager, which is another one that was a kind of bit of a left field nautical bestseller. And it's in the same mould, but I think actually better.
Really? Because I really want to read The Wager.
Oh, The Wager's fantastic. But Hampton Sides is even better.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
But I think Captain Cook, he was an explorer.
He was an explorer, but he was an explorer who carried Western, imperialism to untouched paradises, quite literally.
I mean, by the very fact he's a hero, that's why he's a target.
That too.
Well, although having said that, I mean, look,
but he wasn't like Cortez in Mexico, where he slaughtered, a whole load of natives and played them all off against each other. He quite simply did explore.
Yes, but the argument is that by the nature of the exploration, he brought with him disease and, But it is actually quite difficult when you're reading the the terrible moments where some Polynesian guys that he knew from a previous encounter kind of turn up in his cabin and just show him their super-rating pussing penises, and he feels awfully dreadful about it.
Another cock up.
Yeah.
This has taken a turn, hasn't it?
You're going to also have empathy now. You had empathy for Captain Cook a minute ago. Now we're back now in the super-rating pussing penises.
Yeah, obviously a bastard.
I mean, that chapter's all bollocks.
So look, I agree. Kind of, you know, these are kind of overdone tropes of late. You know, of course, it was an exploration voyage, but on the other hand, that exploration did come at a
So
price.
that was the dark side.
Yeah, and Hampton Sides does not shy away from that.
No,
but
it's important not to. But then at the same time, the other side of it, you know, I think the Australians, for example, used to have a Captain Cook Day.
There is,
don't
yeah.
they?
It's a holiday.
And that's been the cause of protests in the last sort of 10 years of, you know, the sort of workerati and the rest of it. And completely, you're right. You know, don't shy away from that. But you know, that's not the intention of what he was doing. It's an unfortunate byproduct, and it doesn't, and it shouldn't cast everything else he did into the shade.
No, and also, you know, exploration has its own ability, and it's the same arguments were around Christopher Columbus, etc. And you know, whatever. And actually, one of the things that I really like about the book is, in one sense, it doesn't even really bother addressing these arguments too profoundly.
Yeah.
It just takes you on the voyage and says, look, these are the arguments. I'm going to slightly park those, and here we are in a gale, heading across the sea towards Alaska, into the unknown, in a creaky ship with a kind of cast and crew who are all very interesting and brave and different, you know. And it's brilliant. Love it.
Yeah, actually, it reminds me, talking about that, one of my favourite books is, I think the author was called Mike Dash. And he wrote
Batavia's Graveyard.
Batavia's Graveyard, which I just thought was absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's a couple of generations before Cook, or a few generations before Cook, and it's huge, just absolute. It's a ripping book.
It was huge, yeah. I mean, actually, I don't know why there are not more books about. And it's one of these things, you know, naval history sells.
Yeah,
both fiction and non-fiction, but in terms of the commissioning of it, there are spaces.
Well,
people are not, you know,
and it's got that natural kind of claustrophobia to it, because you are enclosed. I mean, dare I say, the same thing with U-boats. It's the same thing. Natural claustrophobia, and the way people rub up against each other. Sometimes they get on, and a lot of time they don't, and that becomes part of the narrative.
No, there's plenty of triumph and tragedies. It's got the lot, and often it was recorded as well. I mean, they're writing stuff down by then.
Well, it's interesting that the two, like, you know, David Grann's Wager became a massive out of the blue bestseller. I mean, that.
Although he's quite a big author anyway. He
is
got
a big author.
kudos.
Killers of the Flower Moon.
Killers of the Flower Moon. Yeah. But I mean, not massive recognition in this country, and then suddenly, the Wager's everywhere, and it's quite an obscure. I mean, it's not. You know, I knew it because being a Patrick O'Brian junkie, there is an obscure early Patrick O'Brian novel about exactly the same stuff that's in the Wager.
Oh right.
I know, who knew? But I agree. I mean, there's not much. You know, so I love naval fiction.
I mean, by the fact of fact, it's in short supply. Actually, the books that are brought out and are decent will get more coverage and sales. And there used to be a lot more of this stuff, basically.
But naval fiction has completely died off. I mean...
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, you know, once upon a time... So, I mean, there's a couple of people
Is that
still
because it's all old white men? Is that the problem?
One of our... I think it was this time last year, I sat here championing a book called Leeward by Katie Day. So it was a gay love story set amidst naval fiction shenanigans. Absolutely brilliant stuff. But yeah, like...
every publisher had their series. Every major publisher had a naval fiction.
Yeah, there was like Ramage and...
well, Richard Woodman very sadly died this year.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to see it make a big old comeback. I love that stuff. I would read anything with ropes in it.
I think, unlike a lot of other historical fiction, the naval fiction, there is a barrier to entry. You really do need to know your way around a ship. It sounds.
Can't blag that one, Roger.
It is true, actually, because I wrote one naval scene in one of my historical fiction novels, and literally it took me so much work to just do one.
Really?
Yeah. And
in terms of homework.
And I've actually sailed on tall ships. I've like climbed up rigging and climbed out along the yardarm and done all of that stuff, and I still found it a leap to actually translate that into kind of something that sounded coherent.
I suppose that's more significant in fiction, though, right, than non-fiction.
But also specifically naval fiction, because a lot of the people, they want the authenticity.
Yeah, and that's part of the thing, part of the appeal for that.
So there is a bit more of a barrier to entry,
I agree.
and also most people writing it are sort of elderly white men.
Yeah.
Do you have to anchor it in plot?
See what you did there.
That's not going to sell.
Stop. Dude, we can't populate this entire podcast with such terrible puns. We'll be...
Right, yes. Let's sail on. Come on, Richard.
So my second pick is a kind of sequel to The Eagle and the Heart, where it's Dan Jones's biography of Henry V. And after the sort of two tragedies of Richard II and Henry IV, we get to Henry V. And I mean, Dan Jones, who's bestseller of Plantagenets and other books, including War of the Roses, Templars, etc. I mean, he's used to, in terms of the medieval period, it is full of, let's face it, some crap kings and some sort of dire times. But Henry V comes along, and he's kind of a breath of fresh air for Dan to write about, and even history where the guy was heroic. I mean, personally brave, more than most, a kind of just and wise king. And I just loved it. I mean, I've read quite a few books on Henry V due to some fiction I wrote years ago. And Dan, uncovers some new stuff and tells you new things. I mean, particularly about the young Henry. There's just most of the books about Henry V, they weight themselves towards Agincourt and when he actually becomes king. But as kind of Prince Hal, this is he basically covers his time, in a sense, looking after the reign of Henry IV. He does very well. And he's, you've read this, Ollie, as well, interviewed Dan, and it's just, it's also quite fun, really.
Can I ask, isn't it written in the present tense?
Yes. Now,
how do we
when
feel about
I
this?
first read that in the opening chapter, I thought that's going to jar me somehow, because I am quite conservative and conventional. But I didn't notice it. I mean, there's a few more books like this as well, and it's a bit of...
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Well, it didn't jar me.
Yeah, you do you get used to it.
You
So
sort of grow into it.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's
you
fine.
kind of get swept along.
Is it a little bit going back to what I was saying about Arnhem, that it takes away the sort of the hindsight effect, that it puts you much more in the shoes?
I couldn't say that. No, not really. I mean, thankfully, his summation, he doesn't sort of, Henry V, if he was a warmonger, Dan Jones is not so overcritical as to use that to bash Henry with a stick that everything else he did was wrong.
But would you prefer the book to have been written in past? Did it add anything?
Do you know, it didn't bother me. I mean, there are some...
Did it add anything?
No, I just didn't notice it, really. I was sort of swept along with...
In which case, what's the point?
I don't know. It's ask Dan Jones, if you like.
He addresses the point in his preface or something, doesn't he?
Yeah. I mean, there's a few other books like this. This is becoming a bit more of a trend. And some people have said, in terms of other books, it's jarred them, but... I don't object to it, actually, because I think one of the things that sometimes is you get in historical fiction that you don't get in kind of well-written history is that sense of the historical present, the sense that the people involved don't know what's going to happen. And it's an obvious point, but sometimes it's not made clear enough when, that actually... everything, the decisions people make, they're taking in the present. Yeah. And I think maybe it can help with that. Maybe having more stuff written in the present.
That, and that's why I mentioned Al Murray's book, because that's where he's coming from with that.
But that's not present
single day. No, it's not. But he takes a single day and almost kind of strips out the baggage of hindsight by doing that.
I mean, funnily enough, you have Anthony Beevor's book on Arnhem, where at the very beginning he basically said, "This was always going to fail."
Exactly.
Now. The book sold in its gazillions, and God bless that. But you are taking some jeopardy away. I mean, history books are still it's the art of storytelling. historians are storytellers.
But it's also the arts of analysis, which depends on hindsight. So I guess that's the question.
And then there's a balance there to be struck. Yeah. So I get that a lot when the few bits of TV that I get offered that I take. Very often they say they want everything in the present tense, which kind of it does jar with me, because in my mind it's all so and so did that and he thought that and this happened and so on, and to sort of when you're ad-libbing for the camera, I find it very difficult to put all that in the present tense.
I mean, in terms of a sort of the longer analysis and the arc of Henry's life, I mean, again, it covers a lot of young Henry, where you see the seeds being sown of, a great military leader, a sort of good statesman, and it all happened when he was younger. So when we get to, in a sense, his glory years, we knew, Henry as a younger man. And it's a kind of simple thing, but with most biographies of Henry, they've not really gone into that much. Again, I mean, this book should serve as a biography for Henry V for a very long time.
And it's a really good link between his Plantagenet's book and the Hollow Crown.
Yeah, for anyone who liked the sort of Plantagenet's book, it's the coda to it, basically. And then there's the gap before the Wars of the Roses, the Hollow Crown, So he has kind of completed a series and got to breathe out. And he's an absolute, machine for basically writing very good argument, very good narrative history. A young national treasure.
Yeah, his books are great.
He's done a heck of a lot of history.
Okay, we're going to take a pause now whilst we refuel, and then we'll resume. Hello, Ollie here. Please forgive my interruption, but I wanted to let you know that at Aspects of History, we produce a digital magazine featuring articles, interviews, short stories and book reviews of the best historical writing available. Authors featured including Ben Macintyre, Lucy Worsley, Andrew Roberts and plenty more. An annual subscription is available for only $9.99, that's pounds or dollars. Yep, you heard that right. That's 6 issues for under £10 or dollars. Head over to aspectsofhistory.com to subscribe, where you can also gift subscriptions since Christmas is coming. Now back to the show. Right, so my second book is The House of War by Simon Mayle. And this is a book that covers a lot of history, but much more than The Price of Victory. This goes from basically the clash. It's basically the clash between Christendom and the Caliphate, or you could update that to Christianity versus Islam, which is a book by Simon Mayle. He is a former soldier. Fought in Iraq and Afghanistan. He studied history at Oxford and then went straight into the army. And now he rose up. He became, I think, a lieutenant general. And now he's written this book that... So in there, Roger, your Polish history. You'll remember your man who, on the cavalry, charges to Vienna, saves Vienna.
Siege of Vienna.
The Siege of Vienna.
Yeah, King Jan Sobieski.
Jan Sobieski, he's there.
Gates of Vienna, as it's known. Yeah.
You get the big clashes, the big battles in the Holy Land, and then, of course, there's the Charles Martel battle in the 8th century.
Battle of Tours?
Yes,
Tours, yeah.
Or I think the French know it as the Battle of Poitiers, don't they?
I don't know.
I think they do, yeah. It's one of those ones that, in my mind, is always confused. I think
it's very deceitful of the French to do that, because they are knowingly pretending that the real Battle of Poitiers doesn't happen, which, of course, we all know the Black Prince won.
Yeah.
In the 100 Years' War. But anyway, the conceit of the book is that it's all the clashes between the two ideologies.
That sounds brave.
It does sound brave, but
he's a soldier.
Yeah.
Yes, he is. And as he sensibly points out, we do talk a lot about... And he's been a guest on the podcast to talk about it, so listeners, if you missed that, check it out. It's really interesting. But he does stuff like... We all talk about the Crusaders invading the Holy Land and fighting the Saracens, but no one really addresses the fact that the Moors conquered most of Spain.
Yeah.
And that seems to have been kind of forgotten about when we're talking about the whole who was colonising who. And... So he just takes a different perspective. He's very interesting on Iraq, because I asked him about his experience in Iraq and Afghanistan, and when George Bush used the word crusade, he said, well, what did he say? It's quite funny. He said, well, George Bush isn't known for being a historian, so perhaps we can forgive him saying the word crusade. But really, that was actually how it was viewed in that way by certain elements that just made things a little bit more difficult than they needed to be. He's very reasonable.
So for him, the idea of the book grew out of that experience, did it?
Well, he's got a lot of knowledge in the Middle East. I think he's working there today, and I think he studied Middle Eastern studies at.
I mean, there's a lot of soldiers.
You've met him, haven't you?
Yeah, he's funny. I met him at lunch. But there's a lot of soldiers where they studied history at Oxford, Cambridge, wherever, and they had long career in the army. But history was their passion, and they're just going back, and it's unfinished business. Where back in the day, they may have wanted to be historians. And,
well, I like the premise very much. Yeah. It's sort of it is an untold story, because it's one that certainly for the last 50, 100 years, nobody would touch. So, to actually
it's
pick
probably
that up
not going to get on
it.
the school syllabus nowadays. Though.
It probably
should,
won't.
though. It should.
Yeah,
no, I agree.
It's perfectly.
I agree.
He's very careful on saying that the problem in the West is we don't really understand the Middle East.
Yeah.
And you should just go there with a little bit more respect, or if you're speaking to someone who has knowledge of that area, just be a little bit more respectful. And he said he doesn't think that we are particularly respectful. So I think if I'm sounding like it's some kind of Trumpian type approach to.
No, I wasn't taking that, but I think it's overshadowed by our sort of modern blinkers and our modern prejudice to a large extent. So that anything that tilts against that's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I for one welcome our new Islamic overlords, just for the records.
No blaspheming in this podcast.
Inshallah.
Roger Moorhouse's email address is available to any jihadis listening.
Got a big post box.
Yes. Roger, so
I'm going with my third pick is I'm going with Adam Zamoyski's Isabella the Valiant, which I read and I reviewed it in the summer. What can you say about Adam Zamoyski? He's one of the absolute titans of Polish history, and there are a few of them. Norman Davies, of course, my old mucker is another one. But
there's one in this room.
There's one in this room. It could be said.
There's two.
It
There's
could be
two.
said.
You mentioned it. Just the two. Just the two.
But no, he is one of the titans of Polish history, and he's one of the people that has done, like Norman, has done tremendous work popularising Polish history beyond the Polish diaspora, because there's a great problem that you've got a ready-made market, and they all know everything that you're talking about, and the problem is always to reach beyond that and sort of try and popularise the subject beyond that sort of core. And I think he's one of those that has achieved that over his career with aplomb. This was his Isabella the Valiant was his COVID project, effectively. She was actually his ancestor.
It's a family history project.
It's family history, exactly. So he was drawing on a lot of materials that hadn't seen the light of day before, and certainly hadn't been published before, which is always a great thing. And he places her very, very effectively and succinctly within that world. This is the late period of the First Polish Republic, so running up to the partitions and then into the Napoleonic period. So absolute maelstrom of a surfeit of international affairs, we could say.
I mean,
in
she
Central
didn't
Europe.
just straddle the period, though.
No, she didn't. She had numerous lovers, and her husband didn't know how many of her children were her own, or were his, as it were.
He didn't much care.
And didn't
No,
much care.
he didn't know. He educated them.
Yes,
didn't
but he raised them all,
Yeah.
but without without really knowing anything about their paternity. And to some extent, that was kind of the world. That was certainly the world
it is
of the
a window
nobility.
into the
Yeah, and
European
that's
aristocracy,
fascinating.
yeah.
But also, she was a complete sort of autodidact. She sort of taught herself pretty much everything, both in terms of high culture and mid culture, and then also how do you run an estate, which she obviously had to do as well. She taught herself all of that. So she's obviously a fantastically intelligent woman. and very, very capable. And it reads like, and then she met Voltaire, and then she met with, she had an audience with Frederick the Great, and so it goes on. It is quite an astonishing story.
Didn't she have an affair with Sobielski's son?
She had so many. I can't remember that particular one. One of her paramours ended up on the guillotine in Paris during the Revolution, which I think apparently that tugged at her heartstrings. But she's just he really places her in that world, and it is complicated. It's not.
But it's quite.
You have to say it's not necessarily an easy read. It's relatively short and it's quite pacey, but there's so many references being dropped that it quite kind of you in a way you need to keep your wits about you, or maybe have a bit of knowledge of that period anyway. But in terms of original research, he writes beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, he's a high stylist. It's he can put a sense together like a few others.
Yeah, he's fantastic. So, listeners, episode is on the podcast with Adam talking about this book. If this piques your interest, it should.
I mean, there's a gift as well for your wife, mum. Going to be sexist. It's a ladies' book, predominantly, but not exclusively.
I don't think so.
What's a ladies' book?
I don't think it is at all, though. I completely disagree.
It's a bit like the books I'm seeing in your library right now.
Oh, really?
Well, Antonia, we're shifting from Adam Zamoyski's Isabella the Valiant.
Well, as a lady, I feel like I should now picking something involving crinoline and, I don't know... Bodices and lovey shit. But no. So, obviously, this is the year that I've been running Spy Masters, which is the kind of sister podcast to this one. And it's been going a year, and it's been great fun.
Link is in the show notes, listeners.
Thanks, Ollie. So I want to pick a spy book, and my favourite spy novel that I've read this year is by the amazing Ilana Berry, who is herself a former CIA officer, and she worked in Iraq, and she was handling agents, handling sort of informers and stuff, and she's an incredibly interesting woman, and the interview is well worth listening to. But the book is also fantastic. It is called The Peacock and the Sparrow, and it is set in Bahrain during the Arab Spring. And it's a kind of it's a sort of old school spy novel in one sense, because it is a character-led, morally murky, fascinating look at a sort of period in history that's quite difficult and quite nuanced through the lens of a kind of espionage plot, and it's just fantastic, and I highly recommend it. And she brings all her accumulated knowledge of what it's like to work for the CIA into the writing of the novel, which gives it a sense of authenticity. But she's also a really fine writer, because plenty of people have worked for spy agencies and then Stella Remington wrote a spy novel, right, didn't she? So lots of people who have worked in that field then try and make the transition to novelist. But actually, being a novelist is not that simple or that easy. And Ilana Berry, I think, is one of the few who...
Different skill set. So.
Well, to be honest, one interesting thing, and we talked about this in the podcast, is actually that there is some similarities. You still have to be a kind of observer. You have to sometimes sort of be a bit dishonest with the people around you, because you're kind of using their stories for your own kind of profit. So it's not dissimilar in how you go about it, I guess. But just because you're a good sort of dissimulator doesn't mean that you can string sentences together.
True.
I mean, she's working within a spy and or literary tradition, because a couple of people told me it basically leans into the Quiet American.
Yeah. She's basically... I mean, I guess if you were being ultra critical, which I'm not, then maybe it's a little too leaning into the Quiet American.
Oh, really?
Well, there are worse crimes, I think. I mean, she's basically, it's so famous a book that it's honour in it. It seems.
I feel a little bit like it's a bit like if
you say sort of transported into Bahrain.
The Tailor of Panama that Le Carré wrote.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I kind of feel like it's a bit like, with something like Tolkien, like, right, you can't write a fantasy novel without having Tolkien in your mind, even if you reject his. Ilana is writing another one. We'll have it on next year.
Is this her first?
Yeah. She's got lots of awards. It's the real deal.
Really? I thought she was a seasoned author.
No, it's a debut. She's one to watch. You heard it here. I think she's a really excellent thing. I think that the interesting thing will be whether she so much of, I think, of her experience went into writing this book, that it will be interesting to see whether actually there's another equally good book there. Like, you know how like maybe some Vietnam vets wrote like one brilliant book
Born
about
on the
Vietnam,
4th of July.
Right? Yeah, because you've got like enough copy for one brilliant novel, but then
was
maybe
it Michael
you
Hare
haven't got...
Dispatches, wasn't it? That was a very good.
Well, I was thinking of Carl Malante's Matterhorn, but that's one of the best books I've ever...
That's the only thing he wrote?
No, he wrote a second novel that was terrible about unions. It was the worst book ever. So I think sometimes if you're bringing loads of your personal experience to bear on a subject, and you put your heart and soul into that book, and it's possible that that's the only one you've got. So
Do we know if it's going to be a series or it's going to be? Okay.
I think so. No. I mean, David McCloskey is the other one who's making waves at the moment. Another former CIA guy, and he's now written 2, and he's got a 3rd one out in January. And hopefully, I'm going to have him on the podcast again because he's fantastic and has just launched a new podcast with the Rest is History crowd called The Rest is Classified. Well done, those guys. Not, it's fine.
Ridiculous, the title of the podcast, isn't it?
I don't know, but it's straight in at number 1 on Apple Podcasts.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wow. Good for David. He deserves.
Good for David. David's brilliant.
And Gordon Carrera.
And Gordon Carrera.
We're not advertising a rival podcast on this podcast.
No, let's not.
If they pay us, we will.
Yes. Then we're theirs.
I don't think they need to be fair. But yeah, I don't know if it's if there's another one coming. But yeah, she's awesome. So yeah, looking forward to another year of top spy novels and whatever. And I'm finishing off my own spy book now. So yeah.
And when's that out?
Well, not till 2026, Roger. Thanks for asking. So yeah, 2025. What a year that's going to be.
Indeed, huge,
yes.
Enormous.
Yeah, because there's a big book on U-boats coming
There's
out.
There's a big book
Roger
on U-boats
Moorhouse?
coming out in October 2025 with William Collins.
Very exciting, Roger.
Indeed.
Looking forward to that.
Yes.
Okay, and so Richard, I think we're getting to your...
Well, this is not, I wouldn't say this is a book of the year, but this is one of the gift books of the year. In terms of a stocking filler, and it was put together by someone around this sofa, our own Oliver Webb Carter. So we have Military Matters, which involves a lot of our kind of favourite authors from aspects of history, contributing various interviews and articles on military history. And we've got ancient history, we've got medieval history, we've got World War I, World War II. We got the lot. War seems to be quite ever present.
Napoleonic Wars.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any contributions by Britain's top Nazi historian?
Yes, Roger's written something in there.
Yeah. Our greatest Nazi historian, yeah.
Top Nazi historian.
We couldn't get Zamoyski or Norman David.
Wow.
So it's just a great gift book, basically, because you can dip into it, and also you'll probably kind of encounter some of the big names, people like Max Hastings, etc. But you'll find some kind of new writers as well. Buy it for yourself, and then re-gift.
Well, I did. Believe it or not, listeners, and you're not going to believe me, but I did not pay Richard any money to bring that up.
I concur. He did not pay me any money.
Aspects of History does have a book out, FYI. Military Matters, really? Well, Richard, that's touching.
Hardback.
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
And Kindle.
And Kindle.
And free if you have Kindle Unlimited.
There you go. Please
Very good. What's
check
not
it out.
to like?
So added to the advert that I've done for the magazine in the middle of this podcast, plus the 3 adverts at the beginning, 3 adverts at the end. The poor old listeners.
It's like Bob Geldof, give me your money.
Yes, and it's not going to Africa.
No, it's not.
Spoiler.
Staying here.
Yeah, it's probably not even leaving Dulwich.
Lewisham.
Sorry.
Lewisham. No, it's all going to a good cause. Right. So my final book of the year, and I have... Okay, so on the brilliant Spy Masters podcast episode, which is coming out soon, again, links are in the show notes, I picked my book of the year in that was The Siege by Ben McIntyre, so that is my book of the year. But I didn't want to bore listeners, so I've picked another book of the year, which is William Boyd's Gabriel's Moon. And I've just finished it since recording that Spy Masters podcast. And it's just took me back to all the great William Boyds that I love. And because it's thrilling, page-turner, so well written because it's William Boyd. And then it's also got just so much humour throughout as well. And that's kind of the key with William Boyd. He's got such a brilliant sense of humour. And it's a spy story set in the 60s, starts with a Lumumba plot in 1960 in the Congo, and so it involves America's influence in trying to secure Congo and their uranium deposits, and of course the Soviets are interested in that. So that begins the sort of espionage plot of the novel. And
we're almost back to The Quiet American.
Yeah, maybe, but it's you're not there for long. And then the protagonist is Gabriel Dax, and he's just a brilliant William Boyd type character who likes to drink, is a travel writer, he lives alone in Chelsea, he has a girlfriend who works at the Wimpy. Richard?
Yeah, no, it's well, it was my pick during the Spy Masters. I mean, I read this novel as soon as it came out, and I loved it as well. And actually, since that, it's about half a dozen people who I sort of, got time for in terms of recommending books. It's all been a book of the year for them. It's go buy this book. It's not got the best cover in the world, and I don't think it's got the best title in the world, but it is one of the best books of the year, comfortably.
Well, it's going to be the first of a trilogy of spy novels involving Gabriel. And actually, what I haven't mentioned is I think my favourite character in the book is Faith Green, this extraordinarily...
Enigmatic.
Yes.
Not enigmatic.
Female spy, yeah.
Enigmatic, I think.
It's not...
I think that's what you meant to say, isn't it, Richard?
What is it about these writers who drink in the William Boyd novels? Tell me about those. Thumbs up to that book, though.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And also, I mean, a lot of these books, they do lack humour, but there's plenty of humour in this book.
There's kind of
having fun.
Slight, yes, definitely. There's a slight sort of incompetent Bond type, because in that you get lots of different locations throughout it. He's travelling around the world. He maybe doesn't drink as much as Bond, but he's working for MI6. It's just fantastic stuff. Really.
Well, Gabriel Dax just sounded very Bond kind of
it does
Bond
actually.
villain kind of name.
Yeah, it does.
Good.
No, there are nods to all sorts of kind of things, espionage-wise, and it's kind of it's set in the early '60s. It's kind of a greatest hits of kind of spy lore.
And Dax, of course, means badger in German. So there's that.
Okay.
Mm.
Gabriel Badger's less cool name.
yeah, slightly.
Well, I think
we've been badgered enough.
No, we can't end on that pun. Somebody else has got to say something.
Yeah, we'll have to think of something else. Maybe we could talk about Israel again.
Something uncontroversial
on. Well, is there anyone looking forward to any books next year?
Oh yeah, there's loads. Tom Holland's got a new translation of Suetonius coming out.
Oh, is that
12
next year?
Caesars. 12 Caesars.
Yeah, it's been delayed, but I think it's coming out in March time. Yeah,
January or February.
Okay.
February, early February. I'm going to try and speak to him about it.
Okay, that's something to definitely look forward
anything else? That's the ancient world, I'm afraid, Roger.
Obviously, Roger's U-boat book.
My
I'm very
U-boats.
looking forward to.
We're running with Grey Wolves at the moment as a title, but that might change. But that'll be out in October.
Wow.
Grey Wolves.
What's the title?
The Wolf
Grey
Packs.
Wolves.
The Wolf Packs. Far better title. Listeners, do write in and say which you prefer.
Yeah.
Saul David's got Tunisgrad out, hasn't he?
He has, which is dedicated to yours truly.
Is it?
Surely.
Yeah. I did want one of the bigger books, but he's given me Tunisgrad.
How much are you paying for that?
Nothing. I'm paying for a bigger book. Yeah. And actually, in terms of military history book of the year, we shouldn't.
Sky Warriors.
Sky Warriors was good.
Is excellent. Yeah.
So when's Tunisgrad?
It's about September or
okay.
He's basically going to take some of your marketing budget.
Is. Yeah. So he's we're in the same
exactly.
publishing house. So
yeah.
I think there's me and him and
Max Hastings
Max
may
Hastings.
have a book
I
out
think
then.
those are the three. I was told were the three big, non-fiction titles of the autumn.
Well, they say all sorts in publishing.
Not much of it's true.
And there's a new McCloskey book out next year.
Yeah, the 7th floor. I've got it upstairs. I can't wait to read it.
And your own book is not out till the year after, listeners, just in case you're...
Yeah, still some time.
We can just build the excitement.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's your lot, listeners. Thank you very much, Richard.
Merry Christmas, everyone. And God bless you all.
That's very nice.
It's a bit sinister.
God bless one and all. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Antonia. And thank you, Roger.
Thanks, Ollie.
Thanks, Ollie.
And thank you, listeners.